Iodine, Kindle. Let's talk about Christ.
Let's talk about the King of Kings.
Let's do it.
Even though that we can never really fathom his greatness, let's try to at least put together something that, would be understandable to the normal Christian, I guess.
Well, I feel like on this show,
we're going to go through some of the top prophecies for Christ in the Old Testament and look at them.
Yeah, let's hit some of the top ones today, and then maybe we'll go through more in detail later. But let's hit about 5 of them. But before that, let's just talk about the King of Kings, man. How who could not love the guy? Who was more about love, mercy, forgiveness, truth. In the Old Testament,
who had a greater philosophy than Jesus Christ? Did Buddha? Not really. Did Muhammad? Definitely not. I mean, is there anybody that's philosophy was pure? Plato, Socrates?
who gave us the Good Samaritan, the prodigal son, the forgiven adulteress. Also, think about this, you guys. The Old Testament, right? The Creator killed somebody because the Ark of the Covenant was about to fall on the ground, and he reached out and touched it. Yet Christ comes. He walks among us, born in a barn, arguably, or a manger, and walks with hobos, lived as a servant to others, washed people's feet with his own hands.
Well, that's what I like about him too, that the way that he entered the world humbly. He could have came in as a Caesar or some sort of emperor, but he came into a child that was born into a barn in a remote part of the Roman Empire, and is, no matter what anybody says, believe in him or not, it doesn't matter. He is the most influential person in human history. Nobody has changed the human path or just history as much as he has. Now, why is that?
It's a good point, man. Whether you're an atheist or not, who can deny that the whole modern world bases their calendar off of him.
Every holiday, basically.
Third of the world stands by him. What's there to say? But
it's why I don't get why atheists don't like him. I mean, listen, dude, even if you don't believe that he is, the creator of the universe incarnate, he still gets you 3 days off of work.
Hey, also, think about this.
Hey. So what are you so mad at the guy about?
Also, let's touch on this. 1st century, right? Think about how women were held. They arguably still are held in modern Judaism. Yet he hung out with the women, and he told the women to go and preach that he was resurrected as like the first people, which is like the main part of Christianity, is telling that. And he was just a different guy, man. Talk about alpha. Talk about trailblazer. What's there to say?
Well, and also, too, I think that if you are a person that doesn't like to subscribe to any sort of faith system, because deep down inside of your heart, you're afraid of some sort of judgment, Christianity is the way to go.
The woman at the well, the living waters, the forgiven adulteress, like we've talked about before. Like,
that's one of my favorite stories. Some people say it's not part of the oldest biblical manuscript.
Yeah, I've heard that myself, actually.
What you talking about, Iodine?
A lot of people like to say that John 8 is not in some manuscripts, but when I looked into it, I was not satisfied with the arguments at all. And I think that John 8 is one of the most touching stories where, it's like It's just
the argument's based off the belief that they didn't catch the actual adulterer, and you need 2 or more witnesses. Well, how many witnesses were there? Oh, there were 2 witnesses in John 8, weren't there?
Even if you throw out that chapter, though, look at Luke, where, how about this, when Magdalene or whoever was washing his feet with her hair, and, you know, he's getting kind of judged, like, if you knew what kind of woman this was, so-and-so. And you know what he told Peter, out of all things? He was like, don't take this as a direct quote, but it was something like, Peter, if somebody owed you $500 and somebody owed you $50, and you forgave them both, who's going to love you? Who's going to love you more, right? The guy you forgave 500 is going to love you more than the one you forgave 50, right? Generally, so he's just showing, man, that, like, what's the limit to what he will forgive? I don't think that means we should go out and sin. Like, if you see your kid, he does something real messed up to his sister, you might want to, you know, punish him. But if you see him with a contrite heart, a repentant spirit, talking to his sister, like he was really sorry about it, with his tears in his eyes, seeing those tears in his eyes and him trying to comfort his sister, she might love him more even before everything went down, you know?
That's a good point.
I think before Christ, most religions didn't necessarily equate you as a son of God the way that Christianity does. Like, you're a creation of God in these belief systems, but you're not a son in the sense that he actually loves you. You dig me?
He think he made it more personal than a lot of these other religions.
Right. That's basically what I'm getting at.
I mean, what else we got compared to all these religions? If you think about it, almost every single religion that's older than 3,000 years old, and we'll get to more of this in a future video, has to do with beings that came from the heavens and interacted with man, taught them things. Like, they were above, right? They had
but
the
not
higher
as
knowledge of
father figures. There was always some sort of catch. See, the thing with Christianity is there is no catch. It's a free act of grace. You ain't got to really do anything. And, you know, obviously the Father will not be mocked. If you do believe that Christ died on the cross for your sins, you're not going to go out tomorrow and rob a bank. You know what I mean? But in a lot of the older, and they're not even really older religions, they're older texts that we have. I mean, we obviously subscribe to the oldest religion because Adam was not a Zoroaster. Adam was not, you know, somebody that worshipped the Anunnaki. Adam worshipped the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Adam's the first man. So just because you have a book or in some Sanskrit or anything that predates, you know, the Dead Sea Scrolls or the Septuagint or whatever Hebrew text you have, it doesn't prove that religion is older. It's just something that's older that you found. You see what I'm getting at?
I hear you. Well,
yeah, because if the claims of these religions were all true, including Christianity, if we just say for the sake of discussion that they're true, then they all go back well before the written materials, right? So when people judge just based on the age of the written materials, it's inherently flawed. We know those are not the oldest copies. We know it for a fact. So I don't know why people judge various religions based on the age of the copy of the text that we have now. It makes no sense.
Right.
Hey, getting back to the King of Kings, though, let's touch on a couple of his parables real quick before we jump into these prophecies. Just getting more detailed, the prodigal son. He made a point just showing how these one son went away, like pretty much partied, lived riotously with his inheritance. One son stayed behind. When the repentant son came back to his father, he was like, well, maybe he'll let me eat with the pig's feet or something like that. And he just embraces him, and the other brother gets basically jealous about it. So if anybody thinks that they can't come to him, it's too late. Just think about something like that, right?
And there's other parables that are related to that, especially the one with those dudes chilling in the town square. You know what I'm talking about.
Well, even the one where the woman, like if you have one lost sheep out of 100, you're going to go looking for that lost sheep, leave the other 99 behind, man. Right?
There's several other ones, yeah.
And how about the Good Samaritan, where these people were like the, derided people of the day, the people that were like, oh, probably when you said their name, it was almost like a put down. And somebody asked him, well, who's my neighbor, after he was acting like you should love your neighbor. And he gave a story about how the Samaritan basically, like these other people passing by this guy on the road who was beaten down, robbed, and like they just like kept on walking by. The Samaritan was the one who stopped by and helped this guy, healed his wounds, helped get him a room up in the inn. And that's just another example of who Jesus's heart is. He's the kind of guy that's our neighbor. Like that's the one who's our neighbor, even though he was like part of the more derided class. That's what it's about, man. It's loving our neighbor as ourselves, treating others like we want to be treated, and most importantly,
and that goes back to us asking each other. I mean, is there more of a peaceful philosophy? Is there some sort of religion out there that teaches a more pure view on how to handle, your fellow man?
And just alpha, man. People like alphas, man. Whether you're a guy in high school, you want to hang out with the cool kids. Whether you're if the girl, man, the girl might be even more so. They want to hang. Who is more of a? I don't know if I should even say this, but who like is the King David a badass? And you're behind like, and who's one more step above the King David? I don't know if it's proper to call the King of the Universe that word or not, but. Who would not want to stand by just somebody who was that cool, that life of the party? But any other words before we jump into the prophecies here?
Let's look at the prophecies. I'm sure plenty of on-topic discussion about Christ will arise.
And let's have the prophecies speak for themselves. You know what I mean? And these aren't Nostradamus prophecies either. These ain't some weird, metaphysical, type of things. I mean, any type of Bible prophecy that you get is typically straight to the point. You don't have to, deal it out.
Let's do it. Let's start with Psalm 22. How about I read through it? This one's kind of long, so will bear with me. I try to go pretty fast here, but... All right, let's put this in context. This is dated to about 3,000 years ago in the time of King David, right? This is long before there was any kind of crucifixion that the Romans were doing, as far as I know, where people weren't having nails spiked into their hands to die in a torturous way. All right. My El, why hast thou forsaken me? Why art thou so far from helping me and from the words of my roaring? O my Elohim, I cry in the daytime, but thou hearest not, and in the night season, and am not silent. But thou art set apart, O thou that inhabitest the praises of Israel. Our fathers trusted in thee, they trusted, and thou didst deliver them. They cried unto thee, and were delivered. They trusted in thee, and were not confounded. But I am a worm, and no man, a reproach of men, and despised of the people. All they that see me laugh me to scorn. They shoot out the lip, they shake the head, saying, He trusted on Yahuwah, that he would deliver him. Let him deliver him, seeing he delighted in him. But thou art he that took me out of the womb. Thou didst make me hope when I was upon my mother's breast. I was cast upon thee from the womb. Thou art my El from my mother's belly. Be not far from me, for trouble is near, for there is none to help. Many bulls have compassed me. Strong bulls of Bashan have beset me round. They gaped upon me with their mouths, as a ravening and a roaring lion. I am poured out like water, and all my bones are out of joint. My heart is like wax. It is melted in the midst of my bowels. My strength is dried up like a potsherd, and my tongue cleaveth to my jaws. And thou hast brought me unto the dust of death. For dogs have compassed me, the assembly of the wicked have enclosed me. They pierced my hands and my feet. All right, let's pause here before I read the rest of it. Just the hands and the feet part alone, who died like that back in the day? And this isn't the only thing in the Old Testament that talks about something like this. Like we'll be getting.
So, for people that don't know, we should give them context. If we had to guess what year this was written, would you say that like around like 1000 BC is a responsible guess?
Like I said, about 3,000 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, the crucifixion was not in common use at that time, right? It didn't come until hundreds of years later. And the Roman Empire was not established yet.
There was the Roman Empire 3,000 years ago. I think it was starting, 752 BC. And the Western Roman Empire ended in 476, I believe. So that's, I mean, when this was written, there wasn't even a Roman government to do this.
Yeah, and check out verse 8 too. How would that make sense if it was just David talking about himself? It's like it's like the people, whoever this guy's getting pierced, they're like, he trusted on Yahuwah that he would deliver him. Let him deliver him, seeing he delighted in him. Now I sound like a prophet who people are mocking, like, yeah, he thought he was a big hotshot guy. And they don't think he's going to be saved. And that's just basically exactly what happened like 1,000 years later, right? In the first century with Jesus Christ.
Absolutely. And also the Bulls of Bashan quote, that is a pretty significant location, I feel. It's pretty close to Mount Hermon, and it's pretty close to some occultic areas in northern Israel. So the Bulls of Bashan is a confusing reference, but I personally think it means some sort of demonic force.
Well, whatever it is, that's even the hands and it, that thing alone is interesting. And we're later on in the slideshow, we're gonna get to some more stuff that have to do with holes in the hands. But we finished the chapter here. I may tell all my bones, they look and stare upon me. They part my garments among them and cast lots upon my vesture. But be not thou far from me, O Yahuwah, O my strength. Haste thee to help me. Deliver my soul from the sword, my darling from the power of the dog. Save me from the lion's mouth, for thou hast heard me from the horns of the unicorns. I will declare thy name unto my brethren. In the midst of the congregation I will praise thee. Ye that fear Yahuwah, praise him. All ye the seed of Jacob, glorify him. And fear him, all ye the seed of Israel. For he hath not despised nor abhorred the affliction of the afflicted, neither hath he hid his face from him. But when he cried unto him, he heard. My praise shall be of thee in the great congregation. I will pay my vows before them that fear him. The meek shall eat and be satisfied. They shall praise Yahuwah that seek him. Your heart shall live forever. All the ends of the world shall remember and turn unto Yahuwah, and all the kindreds of the nations shall worship before thee. For the kingdom is Yahuwah's, and he is the governor among the nations. All they that be fat upon earth shall eat and worship. All they that go down to the dust shall bow before him, and none shall keep alive his own soul. A seed shall serve him, it shall be accounted to Yahuwah for a generation. They shall come and shall declare his righteousness unto a people that shall be born, that he hath done this. Alright, let me back up just for the top right here. Obviously, the garments parted thing, if you know anything about the Gospels and what happened to Jesus on the cross, you know about them, not only did they divide his articles of clothing, but they had the coat that was seamless or whatever, that they actually cast lots on because they didn't want to divide it. And this is all like 1,000 years before that happened, right? You guys have anything to add to that part?
Can you tell me more about the seamless coat?
Well, I guess I just basically, what the Gospels talk about is that he basically had a coat that was like that, and I guess it was pretty fancy back in the day to have one coat like that.
The prophet said that he was going to be wearing some sort of garment that the Roman soldiers were going to prefer not to divide. They were going to gamble for it. And the prophet said that about 1,000 years before that actually happened.
That's pretty incredible.
Yeah, check out verse 24 also. It's kind of getting back to what the earlier chapter part said, because it's like, that prophet that was being tortured or whatever wasn't left forever, I guess, For he hath not despised nor abhorred the affliction of the afflicted, neither has he hid his face from him, but when he cried unto him, he heard. He don't doubt the Father was there all along, even if that's what was supposed to go down, But how about this too? Verse 27: all the ends of the world shall remember and turn unto Yahuwah. Let me ask you this: how many followers of Jesus Christ were there a year before he was born? None, depending on how you look at that. Who knew who Jesus Christ, Yahushua, was at that point? How many people know of who he is now? Yeah, right.
So we're pretty close to almost everybody. We know it's not everyone, but
all the ends of the world might basically just about know of them. Might be some Amazon tribes.
One of my favorite things in the whole scripture, where Gamaliel says, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right. I didn't go to seminary, so anybody who's listening to this, please don't hate on my pronunciation.
Don't even worry about it, Kendall. Do your thing, homie.
But Gamaliel said himself, he's like, look, just let this roll out, and I'm paraphrasing, because if this is all BS, it's going to die out eventually. But if this is true, you're going to find yourself fighting against God himself. And 2,000 years later, 33% of the world worships him as God, King, and Savior. And I guess you can argue that, yeah, well, Buddhists do, Hindus do, and, Muslims to a point, but I don't really consider Muslims that far from our religion, because it's clear that Muslims have taken parts of our religion and incorporated it
into the one to talk about the Islam stuff. He's doing some study recently. It might seem to me almost like it was the devil's plan or somebody's plan to try to take a lot of the early Christians who were, more of the Arab types and try to steer them, because they knew there was something there, so they wanted to take what they knew was there and try to twist it.
Exactly. And you want to know something, brother? Sure. What I just recently learned, which kind of amazed me, well, it's an interesting thought anyway, is that during the initial stages of Islam, the Pope in Rome didn't even consider it a separate, completely separate religion. He considered it like a Christian heresy. You know what I mean?
Well, it'd be hard to consider it the exact same thing when they act like Jesus didn't die on the cross. It's interesting.
Yeah, well, you got Jehovah's Witnesses, and you got
they all have their weird little things. They might ignore the most important part so many times. Like the JWs, they might say he didn't physically resurrect, or the Islam, they might be he didn't die on the cross. What's more important than he died on the cross? You can have every single other thing right, and if you say he doesn't die on the cross, what's it matter? That would be like the one thing the enemy would want us to know.
Yeah, man. That's why
it's interesting how all those tweaks that they make to the various religions, they all have something that affect salvation from a conservative Christian point of view. Like if you believe in old school rules of the Bible, right, old school rules for salvation, most of these religions have some interesting theology here and there, But then they have this one part, all of them, where it it destroys the salvation mission. I think that's an interesting point that you brought up. That's pretty fascinating.
Hey, before we leave this chapter, let me get to the last couple verses. How interesting is this part if you think about it? A seed shall serve him, it shall be accounted to Yahuwah for a generation. They shall come, and they shall declare his righteousness unto a people that shall be born, that he hath done this. What's the biggest Christian mission in this world right now is to not share people with the love of Christ, let them know who he was and everything, you know? It's not even be getting at the whole Christian mission in the last 2 verses of the chapter.
Well, we would have to make a whole nother video on something like that. It's not just a 5-second answer. The whole Christian mission is divided up into like 1,000 missions, just the way that, you know, they divide up the body of Christ in the New Testament. Like, you know, some people have the gift of prophecy, some people have the gift of this, some people have the gift of that. It's not just one mission, but I would say that you are right overall. It is to turn hearts towards Christ.
That was the main mission might be to love the Creator of the universe with all of our heart, soul, mind, body, spirit, or whatever else. And the second might be to love our neighbor as ourselves.
Well, that's definitely the purpose of reality.
But just these last 2 verses, I kind of feel like there might be a hint of what's happened the last 2,000 years, though. That might be more and more people talking about Jesus Christ, what he did, spreading the gospel to all nations. All right, be a little picture here, a little dividing of the garments. All right, let's jump to the next one, man. We'll get into a little bit of Isaiah chapter 9. All right, let me go ahead and read this one. All right. Nevertheless, the dimness shall not be such as was in her vexation, when at the first he lightly afflicted the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali, and afterward did more grievously afflict her by the way of the sea, beyond Jordan and Galilee of the nations. The people that walked in darkness have seen a great light. They that dwell in the land of the shadow of death, upon them hath the light shined. Thou hast multiplied the nation, and not increased the joy. They joy before thee according to the joy in harvest, and as men rejoice when they divide the spoil. For thou hast broken the yoke of his burden, and the staff of his shoulder, the rod of his oppressor, as in the day of Midian. For every battle of the warrior is with confused noise, and garments rolled in blood, but this shall be with burning and fuel of fire. For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, the Mighty El, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and peace there shall be no end upon the throne of David, and upon his kingdom, to order it and to establish it with judgment and with justice. Might have got cut off, but the basic point is you should check it out. In Galilee of the nations, the people that walked in darkness have seen a great light. So who came from Galilee? I'll give you a hint. He's known for the cross. What do you guys think?
Well, that's the confusing part to me is how some people claim that verse 6 is referencing King Hezekiah, but how would that fit in with verse 1 and 2? I mean, how would that fit in with Galilee or a great light? Like, you know, how what about Hezekiah with a great light?
And I agree with you 100%.
How would it fit in with verse 7? What did Hezekiah do if he had one or more, right before and right after Hezekiah there was like a corrupt reign, so there shall be no end to the peace? Where did that happen with Hezekiah?
It might not fit. Yeah.
Now Yahushua hasn't established his government on earth yet. That's why the Lord's Prayer, you're praying for his kingdom be done.
Well, that's debatable, dude. That's debatable, man. The kingdom of God is at hand.
Yeah, it's everywhere, but, you know, he's going to have a real kingdom on earth, like, in a more physical way, where there's not going to be all this crap that you see in the world right now with all the... I will not even get started with it all, because who doesn't already know about it living in this world right now, but... Don't be thinking his kingdom, when he comes down here and lives among us as king in the millennium, that's going to be like it is now. But yeah,
but not every single person on earth has heard of Jesus Christ either.
Be getting up there. Yeah,
That's why they keep that little island, Senegal or whatever. The reason why they're doing that is because they're trying to stop the end times. The Beast Bunch are intentionally keeping the gospel from certain tribesmen because the tribesmen count is 4 corners of the earth. And as long as these cats don't know who Christ is, their punishment is not as far away.
Alright, I guess verse 7 got cut off on the slide. Let me go ahead and finish this. It says, of the increase of his government and peace there shall be no end upon the throne of David and upon his kingdom, to order it and to establish it with judgment and with justice from henceforth even forever. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will perform this. So yeah, I think when he comes, his kingdom's going to be a lot more peace than what's going on right now. He's already got the kingdom over the whole world, but we might get into that in a future video, why evil exists and stuff like that. But the wheat and the tares parable and more gets into stuff related to that. But don't doubt there's a light at the end of the tunnel. You know, how many people live a horrible, miserable life right now because they think that there's no light at the end of the tunnel, man. You know?
Yeah, it's true.
But keep on pushing on. Trust in the Most High.
No, just in the nature of the discussion we're having too. Who is Christ and what is the whole situation about? I feel like people should take into consideration certain things that are found in the Gospels. Where I think, well, what I'm getting at is this, and I'll try to make it short and sweet. Too many people are afraid of the dark side. And if you recall in the Gospels, demons didn't ever argue with Christ. They never tried to step up to him. They never tried to challenge him in any way. When he rolled up, they fell down. They rolled up when he rolled up. They took their mats and they got out of town. They were like, "Oh, did you come to give us problems? Did you come to judge us before the last times?" I mean, even Satan himself, he was trying to be slick with the argument. But he never forced himself on Christ the way that demons would force themselves on other people. You know what I mean? They knew right off the bat that, look, and I think they were confused too, and maybe that's for another video, but I don't think they necessarily knew who he was at the time. And they were confused, but somehow they could sense the power. You see what I'm getting at?
Didn't they seem to really get his power though, right? They might have.
They didn't know how to handle.
They might have basically said, "Why you here before our time?"
They did say, "I know who you are." So maybe they did know. I don't know. But they were scared of him.
Well,
they did not like him around. They did not like his presence, and they didn't even try to challenge him. There wasn't like a demon that said, "Yeah, we'll do something about it."
If you want somebody to have your back, well, give me Jesus Christ over all the nukes in the world, over anybody else in the universe, you know. I guess that's kind of the basics when you're talking about if demons feared him or not. Who else do you want on your side when you're talking about the evil powers of this world? But,
well, I'd like to hear your opinion on what in the scripture makes you subscribe to the identity of Christ that you do. Like, why aren't you a Jehovah's Witness? What does it say in the Bible? Because that's the nature of the discussion right now. Who is Christ? What it's all about? I'd like to hear why you personally don't subscribe to that sort of belief system. Because
we might get into we might have a whole episode on Jehovah's Witness and stuff like that later, but yeah.
Well, if you don't mind me saying my piece on it anyways, because, and the only reason I'm doing this is because I recently talked to
there might not even be that many Jehovah's Witnesses overall in the whole world anyways, but
no, but it's easy to get tricked by them if you don't know the scripture.
Well, there'll be certain people who act like the Creator wasn't born among us as Jesus Christ, but just like we were looking at a bit ago, Isaiah 6, the mighty El, the everlasting Father, and the Prince of Peace. How can you be the Prince of the Peace and the everlasting Father if you're not pretty big time, you know? If you're not the Father himself. If the Prince of Peace wasn't the Father, what makes sense about that? But yeah, how about we jump up? Why don't we jump up to this next verse? So this might be getting back kind of like Psalm 22 because it gets more into the wounded in the hands type stuff. All right.
I love it. Go for it, brother.
And it shall come to pass in that day that I will seek to destroy all the nations that come against Jerusalem, and I will pour upon the house of David and upon the inhabitants of Jerusalem the spirit of favor and of supplications, and they shall look upon me whom they have pierced. And they shall mourn for him as one mourneth for his only son, and she will be in bitterness for him as one that is in bitterness for his firstborn. How about it, you know? Who was pierced? Like, that kind of gets back to what we were talking about earlier with Psalm 22, the pierced type stuff, and then also the relationship between the Father and the Son, because it says, they shall look upon me whom they have pierced. And, you know,
it wasn't even until recently that I realized that somebody pointed out to me, because when Christ was on the cross and he's like, my God, why have you forsaken me? I always thought the same thing. A lot of people do. I'm like, well, why is he calling upon himself? And what he's really doing is he's quoting the Psalms. And you can find that a lot more in the Psalms.
Yeah, I guess he was referencing that in what he said, you know. There's so many other things in that chapter.
It's a direct quote from the Psalm you just quoted.
Yeah, he already had his clothes parted. He'd already had holes, you know, in his hands and his feet. And they had already been mocking him, like, let him save him. So, yeah, he was basically completing that prophecy in a way, I guess. But, yeah, but check out this in the very next chapter from chapter 12 in Zechariah we're looking at right here. The very next chapter. And one shall say unto him, what are these wounds in thine hands? Then he shall answer, those with which I was wounded in the house of my friends. Awake, O sword, against my shepherd, and against the man that is my fellow, saith Yahuwah of hosts. Smite the shepherd, and the sheep shall be scattered, and I will turn mine hand upon the little ones. It'll just be more and more, man. There's some people who act like verse 6 is talking about somebody like a false prophet or something, but just add it up all together, man. Why would this be the next chapter next to what's clearly about Christ if it talks about in the Gospels like 13:7 is, so.
Well, I'd like to make it clear, at least for anybody that ever hears this, just so I don't really have to say it again. I just want to make it clear that my personal belief system is that Christ, Yahushua, is Yah, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob incarnate. And what I believe is that he exists outside of time and space, and Yahushua is like an avatar to him. I don't really see the separation, but I don't deny the Trinity. And I just want I just wanted to put that down on record.
Kind of like if we made a video game, we shouldn't trivialize what he actually did, but if we made a virtual world and we stepped into it with our own avatar, our own player character, right. Is that us or is that our arm? Or what is that?
Yeah, well, it is you. You created this universe on your computer, and then you put your avatar in it. But your avatar is controlled by you, and everything your avatar says is because you told.
So it's kind of like your arm, just like the scriptures say. His arm. It's kind of like he stuck his arm into the fish tank, right? Be part of him. It's not the full power of him, and he did get the full glory of the Father after he returned to the Father, or something like that, hinting that he got some stuff.
But I think the simplest way to put it is the avatar, or like, you create a guy in World of Warcraft or whatever. Well, who do you think that is? That's not someone else. That's just you in the world. And it's kind of like, well, you created the game, then you created the character, and now you're in there.
Yeah, and what examples could they compare that to?
The universe
500 years ago, how could they compare that to any of that now if we have video games now? But what were you saying?
Well, they couldn't.
Now, that might be trivializing it too.
We didn't need to 500
Now, we don't think he was Neo, we don't think this is the Matrix, and we don't think it's all a video game, and it's way more serious than that. There's real pain, there's real suffering, there's real evil. And we're not trying to say that.
Even if it was, those emotions would still be valid. They'd still be real. Even if we lived in a simulation or whatever. My bad. It would still be real. The emotions would be real. I guess the landscape would be fake.
Yeah, but we could have another video about also simulation theory, because there's a lot of stuff related to that that's actually being shown up in modern science recently that helps support stuff like that. For instance, when you go play a video game, the background starts to come into focus better when you get closer, like they're saving data or memory or whatever. And in the double slit experiment, a light behaves differently depending on if somebody is observing it or not. So that hints that it is almost like some kind of programmed, simulated reality to where our hearts are tested and weighed, and this is like a speck of time at the beginning of forever to figure out where we're going from here to the rest of eternity.
Well, even if it is a simulation, the creator, the God of Abraham, is the one that put it together.
We don't think he was just a kid in his mom's basement. We're not trying to say that, but yeah, but how about this next chapter after the last two, just Zechariah 12, 13, and 14. Then shall Yahuwah go forth and fight against those nations, as when he fought in the day of battle, and his feet shall stand in that day upon the Mount of Olives, which is before Jerusalem on the east, and the Mountain of Olives shall cleave in the midst thereof toward the east and toward the west, and there shall be a very great valley, and half of the mountain shall remove towards the north, and half of it towards the south. And Yahuwah shall be king over all the earth, and that day Yahuwah shall be one, and his name one. Like, it's kind of getting back to the more reconciliation thing, where he's Christ, and he's coming to be reconciled, and that's Yahuwah as the king over the earth, right? Yahuwah's feet, not just, the head father's feet, not just the son's feet, right? On the Mount of Olives, where Jesus ascended from to come back down one day in the future. But guess we're gonna try to tackle two more real quick if you guys are up for it. Be two of the biggest, most impressive ones to me.
I'm up for it, man.
All right, let's do it.
Can I throw one in after you're done?
How about you go ahead, man? You want to throw in one right now? What you got?
Well, it's a real quick one. It's a simple one too. It's just adding up the names, the genealogy from Adam to Noah. The whole entire gospel is right there in the book of Genesis. Can't get older than that. I mean, you can argue Job and everything, but it's right there. I mean, you don't even have to wait to the later prophets. We don't even have to really talk about.
Talking about
dude, we could do a whole episode on Malachi.
Me and Iodine were just talking what we were talking about, where it goes. It's basically a genealogy from Adam to Noah in the book of Genesis, and it says something about man appointed mortal sorrow or something come down. It's basically hinting at what Christ's whole story was, and we'll do that on a future video too, because we don't have the slide for it, and I don't have the study notes right up with me right now. We got so much we can tackle, man, and I hope we can do a lot more videos, because we'll be
cool.
we'll be better at figuring out how how all this rolls, and we just got so much material to cover, man, whether it's Christ or evidence for so much other stuff, and even just general chit-chat topics.
We got Nephilim videos coming. We got all sorts of crazy videos coming. So I think this video was good just to be one of the first ones, so people would know like where we stand as far as our opinions on who Christ is.
And a lot of the future video is going to be a lot of these images to get out, man. A lot of people don't know how many images there are supporting Eden, like ancient artwork that looks like different people other than just Abrahamic religion people believed in Eden, and Nephilim stuff you're talking about, giants, and evidence for Exodus, and evidence for the flood, and evidence for creation, and evidence for dinosaurs living among man, whether that sounds crazy to some people listening or not. Like, there's a lot of stuff to cover, and let's start banging it out, man.
Put some of that pottery up, and people might not think that's so crazy anymore.
All right, but
I used to think that was crazy too until I saw those images.
We're gonna have two heavy hitter. What's up? What pottery are you talking about?
The pottery with the Stegosaurus.
There's a lot of stuff we're going to get into, but there's a couple of heavy hitting prophecies I want to bang out real quick before this video gets too long. So let's get these two heavy hitters and then try to get out of here real quick. All right, let me Daniel 9. If y'all know anything about this one, if you really deep dive this one, this might be the most impressive one, arguably, because it points to the specific timing of when Christ was on the cross. If you use one more thing. 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy set apart city, to finish the transgression, and to make an end of sins, and to make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most set apart. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks, and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall, even in troublous times. And after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself, and the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. And the end thereof shall be with a flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week he shall cause sacrifice and the oblation to cease. And for the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate, even unto the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolator. All right, that might seem kind of confusing at first, but let me pull up this and just talk about it. That might seem kind of confusing at first, but let me pull up this and kind of talk about it for a second. All right. First of all, when you look at this scripture, let me find it real quick. All right, might kind of seem confusing at first, what are these weeks it's talking about, right? But if you study that word in Hebrew, it's talking about 7 years and not just a week. Or the first time you hear it talked about is in Genesis, when Jacob makes the deal with Laban for his daughter Rachel.
All right.
Okay, so fulfill her weeks, and we will give this. Fulfill her week, and we will give thee this also for the service which thou shalt serve with me yet 7 other years. So basically, it's getting at 7 years, right? Now, back in the days of Jacob and Laban, they didn't have a 365.25 day calendar, and they used a 360 day calendar. And there's several different links where you can learn more about that, like Sumeria, Babylon, Armenia. Like, that's how the ancient world worked, was a 360-day calendar, and I guess they just adjusted it every once in a while or something like that. But keeping that in mind, that the Shabua means 360 days, let's figure out when it points to from whenever it's talking about in the prophecy. Another point where it's hinting at 360 instead of 365 is just how some of the other stuff works, like in the scripture. Like, it refers to 1,290 days, it refers to 2,520 days, like stuff divided by 30 in one more place. 30 and 15. Alright. Now where's it talking about, though, if it says, from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto Messiah the Prince? That might be our key slogan right here, right? When was the going forth of this commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem? Well, check out this right here in Nehemiah chapter 2. Wherefore the king said unto me, why is thy countenance sad, seeing thou art not sick? This is nothing else but sorrow of heart. Then I was sore afraid, and said unto the king, let the king live forever. Why should not my countenance be sad, when the city, the place of my father's sepulchres, lieth waste, and the gates thereof are consumed with fire? Then the king said unto him, for what dost thou make request? So I prayed to the Elohim of heaven. And I said unto the king, if it please the king, and if thy servant hath found favor in thy sight, that thou wouldest send me unto Judah, unto the city of my father's sepulchres, that I may build it. And the king said unto him, the queen also sitting by him, for how long shall thy journey be, and when wilt thou return? So it pleased the king to send me, and I set him a time. Moreover, I said unto the king, if it please the king, let letters be given me to the governors beyond the river, that they may convey me over till I come unto Judah. And a letter unto Asaph, the keeper of the king's forest, that he may give me timber to make beams for the gates of the palace, which appertain to the house, and for the wall of the city, and for the house that I shall enter into. And the king granted me, according to the good hand of my Elohim upon me. Alright, notice how it says the palace and the house and the wall of the city. It specifically mentioned the wall, right? And also Daniel 9 mentions the wall. This is, I guess, a couple hundred years or so before that. So that might be the key. When would this happen?
I don't really understand what you're getting at. You got to drop back a little bit.
I hear you, man. But this prophecy is kind of confusing. But it's basically telling you when the Messiah, the Prince, comes, right? It's giving you the countdown for when he comes. It's from the going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem. And that's talked about in Nehemiah. Say, when did that? This happened in 444 BC. You can look right here, right on Wikipedia. It'll tell you that in that year, Nehemiah the Jewish cupbearer of this guy, was given permission to return to Jerusalem as governor of Judea in order to rebuild parts of it, right? So this is 444 BC. And if you do all the math, 444 BCE, using 360-day years, you come right to 33 AD when Christ died. It's kind of confusing, I know. A lot of people watch this video won't even understand what I'm talking about, but even using Wikipedia's own date, it points right towards 33 AD.
I'm participating in this video, and I don't really know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of hard to really talk about this one without deep diving it for yourself. But if you ever studied Daniel 9 before, you'll see that. You'll see that from 444 BCE to 33 CE, or 444 BCE.
That's not what Daniel 9 says.
What's that?
I mean, I'm not trying to, contradict you or anything, but that's not what Daniel 9 says. Daniel 9 doesn't give off any exact numbers like that.
It says right here, actually, it has exact numbers. It says 7 weeks and 62 weeks. It's giving you exact numbers. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. That's and if you add all that up, it points you right towards 33 AD from 44 BC or 444 BC.
Yeah, but you need a starting date. Well, you know, we'll talk about that in another video. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, well, no, we talk about it. We might not always agree and everything. Well, what do you think it's trying to say? When do you think this is not talking about the timing of Christ? His arrival and his birth?
You know, I don't know. But what I don't see it saying, like, giving an exact timeline.
That's exactly what it's doing. It even gives you the exact number of Shabuah or 360 day times 7 years. But yeah, it'll be worth everybody studying for themselves. But if you add up all the numbers using Wikipedia's own date for when the city was, you know, when the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem, using Wikipedia's own number, and you use a 365 year like the ancient world used, it points you right towards 33 AD, which is interesting. So, but even if you look past that part of it, right, it's talking about making an end of sins, finishing transgression, and it's talking about Messiah being cut off, and it's saying Messiah shall be cut off, and then afterwards the people of the prince shall come and destroy the city and the sanctuary. Let me ask you this, Kindle or Iodine. When was the city of Jerusalem destroyed by the prince of the people? That was a long time ago, right? 70 AD? So where's Messiah at? Messiah had to come before 70 AD, right?
Yeah, and you know how else we know that, too?
How's that?
Is that if any of the New Testament was written past 70 AD, that would have been mentioned. So you can pretty much guarantee yourself that anybody who wants to say that the New Testament was written, thousands, whatever, many years later, the fact of the matter is that had they been written prior to the destruction of the Second Temple by Vespasian, or I think it may have been Titus. It was one or the other. It totally would have been mentioned, dude. Somebody would have brought that up. So.
But yeah, man. But just, I guess the Messiah had to be cut off before the city and the sanctuary were destroyed. And you know what a lot of Jews try to say to get around this? They act like, oh, that's not the Messiah. That's talking about a priest that lived before the first century or something like that. It's almost like every time the scriptures refer to the direct word Messiah or Mashiach, they don't believe it's the Mashiach they're talking about because it doesn't fit in with what they already want to believe or something like that. So, like...
And this is what we're going to definitely do another video on, but then when the false Messiah comes, guess who's going to be leading them on?
Well, maybe some of the Jews.
It's going to be Jews that don't believe that the Messiah already came.
But,
and aliens and all that, but that's for another time.
But Kendall, I recommend, if you don't think there's specific timing in Daniel chapter 9 verses 24 through 27, I recommend you looking into that and really deep diving it, man, because it really does seem to point right towards 33 AD. If you don't have that in your repertoire for
you're like 2983 BC to
it's kind of confusing to talk about in this video, but whether I was confusing or not, if you don't have that in your repertoire for talking to people, even if you're talking to your own heart, that's evidence for Messiah being the legit guy, then I recommend adding that, man, because that points right towards his crucifixion date, bro. using math that you can check for yourself on my actual website that I'll link to in the description notes. Like, if you really deep dive it for yourself, like, it's not ambiguous stuff. Like, there's numbers right in Daniel, there's numbers right on Wikipedia, 444 BCE that this went down on Wikipedia, and then using a 360-day year, 7 of them for the Shabuah, or 7-day week, or 7-year week.
I don't have a Bible in front of me.
I guess the gist is it's really super.
And then we'll talk about it.
It might be super confusing. Maybe it's not even the best one I should have picked for this video, but I recommend anybody deep dive in that, because it's some of the most hard hitting stuff for the actual timing of Christ. Like, I don't think he came 20 years ago. He's not going to come 20 years from now. I think he came circa 33 AD and died on that cross. And I guess we're on a similar point there, you know. But let's just jump to the last one now, man. Isaiah 53, the classic, alright?
Alright.
Who hath believed our report, and to whom is the arm of Yahuwah revealed? For he shall grow up before him as a tender plant, and as a root out of a dry ground. He hath no form nor comeliness, and when we shall see him, there is no beauty that we should desire him. He is despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief, and we hid, as it were, our faces from him. He was despised, and we esteemed him not. Surely he hath borne our griefs, and carried our sorrows. Yet we did esteem him stricken, smitten of Elohim, and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgressions, he was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and with his stripes we are healed. All we like sheep have gone astray, we have turned every one to his own way, and Yahuwah hath laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed, and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. He is brought as a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before her shearers is dumb, so he openeth not his mouth. He was taken from prison and from judgment, and who shall declare his generation? For he was cut off out of the land of the living. For the transgression of my people was he stricken. And he made his grave with the wicked, and with the rich in his death, because he had done no violence, neither was any deceit in his mouth. Yet it pleased Yahuwah to bruise him, he hath put him to grief. When thou shalt make his soul an offering for sin, he shall see his seed, he shall prolong his days, and the pleasure of Yahuwah shall prosper in his hand. He shall see of the travail of his soul, and shall be satisfied. By his knowledge shall my righteous servant justify many, for he shall bear their iniquities. Therefore will I divide him a portion with the great, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong, because he hath poured out his soul unto death, and he was numbered with the transgressors. And he bare the sin of many, and made intercession for the transgressors. Who does that sound like, if not what happened in first, around 33
You can't deny that, man.
You know who the Jews do try to deny it though, man, but they might act like it's talking about Israel as a whole, but let's go through it verse by verse. Okay? Or just at least jump to some of these most particular ones.
How does that even make any sense, Israel as a whole?
I don't get it, man. How can you be punished for your own sin, or how can you be
This is the reason why Jews aren't allowed to read the New Testament. And I'm sorry if there's anybody who's a Jew listening to this. Ask yourself, how come my rabbi, or how come at the synagogue, and you know that they tell you, don't even bother reading the New Testament. I challenge any Jew to read the New Testament and not completely understand that Jesus Christ, Yahushua, is your Messiah. I don't even claim to be a Jew, dude. And I know I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Be preaching the truth, man. For the transgression of my people was he stricken. How can the Jews be stricken for the transgression of themselves? It might just fall apart so quickly, man. You got anything you want to add about Isaiah 53, Iodine?
Nothing's coming to mind right now, but I'm enjoying listening to you.
Yeah, well, this might be what a lot of people consider like just the most obvious, talking about Jesus Christ, like who was killed for other people. I mean, this might be the gospel in a nutshell, basically. Like, killed for the, cut off for the iniquity of others.
Before we end this conversation, too,
yeah,
I'd like to point out that people who completely say that he was just a nobody, he was just a rabble rouser down in, like I said before, a remote part of the Roman Empire. I hope that this video at least showed you that can't be a viable option. You're going to have to think of something else, because the most influential man in human history, and you can say, yeah, one or two of these prophecies may have fallen. It's not one or two. It's like hundreds. You know what I mean?
I got a website with about 70 or so, or I guess 60 or 70 or so, that just all seem to hint at one thing or another about Jesus Christ's life. So it's really worth looking.
Well, they're just lying to themselves, dude.
And who can?
And another thing too,
yeah. What's that?
I don't know.
Another thing to consider is and you can't just say, oh, you just wrote all this stuff down after Jesus Christ came, because you can look at the Dead Sea Scrolls and you can obviously see that the Old Testament existed well before Jesus Christ died on that cross. So whoever wrote what's in the Old Testament, there's
a whole bunch of evidence post-Bible. I mean, there are countless saints, and I know a lot of people that hear this aren't going to like to hear this, but I'm sorry, but there are just countless saints that had interactions with Christ that performed miracles. The Bible didn't just end 2,000 years ago. God interacts in the world to this very day. And we're going to have other videos on certain things, like, what happened in Fatima, Portugal. And I know, Jacob, you may not think that that was a miracle by
That might be one of those we debate on, that one. I don't know how that was.
Well, you got Padre Pio in the 1960s. He had stigmata, and he was flying around the place, and they were like,
say might be some of that stigmata stuff, man. There might be a lot of people who dealt with that stigmata stuff. If you look into that history of that, I'm wondering what's up with that. Actually,
we can talk about talk about it. At least this channel is open to talk about anything.
Hey, actually, when I first became a Christian, I had a cross type symbol show up on my face.
Time travel. We're going to be talking about, interdimensional stuff. I mean, this is just the tip of the iceberg. You know what I'm saying?
We might get more professional as it goes, too, where I just be bros talking about stuff, kind of hanging out. And there's so much stuff, like even just simple images alone that we have access to that a lot of people don't know about, like our evidence for stuff. So we keep doing it, man. This might have just been something just touch on our king for a little bit, but all right, man, thank you both for being here. Let's do another.
It was great talking to both of you. Much love.
Let's do it again, man.
Back at you. And don't forget, Jesus is the reason for the season.
Amen, brother.
Praises to the King.